Hey, crowdfunding nerds, it is Andrew Lowen here to introduce today's episode, and we are going to be talking about tariffs, but this is from the perspective of a Chinese manufacturer, Chinese supply chain expert, and when I say Chinese, Hersh Glueck lives in China, operates a factory in China, and has tons of expertise. We're going to ask him about China's perspective on the U.S. and what's happening. We're going to talk about updates to tariffs and other things like that. You know, we get into some politics about just how the Chinese see Trump and what's happening and everything. We get into publishers and how publishers can weather this storm and very, very creative ways that I didn't expect that, for like solutions to logistics problems and other things like that you'll have when you manufacture products in China and to import them in the US. We talk about all sorts of future outlook as well. And I'm really excited for you guys to hear this one. It's very long because the information is just that good. And we wanted to release it in a single episode because it's very timely for you guys. We want you guys to get all the information. Let's dive into it. Before this episode rolls, I wanted to let you guys know about the Crowdfunding Nerds Academy. This is a brand new series of courses where you can learn how to build, excite, and prepare a crowd to fund you on launch day. It has been endorsed by industry veterans. We have tons of experience behind us, and we've helped creators at this point raise well over $30 million through crowdfunding and over $100 million in e-commerce sales. So if there's anybody that knows how to teach you to do this yourself, if that's your plan, it is us. You know, we spare no detail. We are very, very concentrated and purposeful in what it is that we share. So we're not going to be sharing any information that you don't need to know. Everything is essential information that you need to know in the order that you should know it. So we cover there are 3 different areas that we cover. First one is Facebook ads for Kickstarter. If you want to build an effective pre-launch following with a Facebook ad campaign that gets you funded on day one, that is the course for you. If you're looking to design a crowdfunding page that converts, this is the course for you. You know, you'll learn all sorts of things about how to effectively demonstrate your product, create a compelling offer that wins backers and things like that. And then our final course is email marketing for Kickstarter and crowdfunding. So you need a crowd in order to fund your project, and email is still the number one way to communicate with your customers, even in 2025. So in the course, you're going to learn all sorts of things about what your fans want to read, how to write to your fans, how to get 50% plus open rates, and how to reduce unsubscribers, how to actually convert your email list into backers. Between 10 and 30% of your email list should become your backers, and more. So we have 3 courses, one fantastic bundled price. You can get any one course for $399, which is, normal price for a course is $700. So save 43% just buying one course. You can get 2 courses bundled for $599, or you can get all 3 courses bundled together for $699. This deal is good all the way through March 31st, and then it's going away. So come join us for the Crowdfunding Nerds Academy. You also get us, by the way. So if you have questions, burning questions, while you're actually absorbing this information, you can ask it, and we will respond in comments and things like that. So help your crowdfunding project reach its fullest potential. You can get up to 67% off and lifetime access to updates and things like that. This is your only chance to lock it in. Make sure to join us by March 31st at crowdfundingnerds.com/academy. Again, crowdfundingnerds.com/academy. Let's get back to the episode.
Game begin.
Let's go.
You have my bow.
Am I ad?
That's awesome.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another awesome episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. I am your host, Andrew Lowen, and I am joined, as always, by sexy Irish Sean. We haven't said that in a long time. That was an embarrassing one, wasn't it? And we have another OG, big friend of the podcast, Hersh Glueck of Hero Type Manufacturing. He is a supply chain specialist. He lives in China. He operates a manufacturing facility out in China. And we're going to talk more about tariffs. And we're going to hear from the Chinese side and, just hear how things are going. And from an awesome manufacturer like Hersh to help you guys understand what options are available to you and what the future outlook seems to be from Hersh's side, what the politics in China are like, and and what the perspective is there. So I'm really excited to hear the other side of the coin. You guys heard our opinions last week, and now just let's dig in from the other side and just really try to understand what's going on here and how we can operate our businesses and navigate through these treacherous waters. Welcome to the show, Hersh.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on, Andrew.
Yeah.
Yet again. Yeah.
Yes.
Very, very exciting times, just like you were mentioning. A lot is happening on the political landscape. Just a very interesting time to be alive in, I would put it that way. Like
Yes.
once in a century.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the tariffs are going up and they're fluctuating like Bitcoin. So aren't they?
Well, it almost feels apocalyptic, like this is the black horse of the apocalypse to bring in
Yeah.
universal inflation. It's like, what's happening? So, Hersh,
Yeah.
maybe you could explain to people listening, because I know that the tariffs have been sort of going up and down and up and up, and maybe just explain where we are currently for those who are just chiming in. Whereabouts are we sort of standing?
So I think the tariff story goes back to the first term of Trump's presidency. And back then, I don't know if everybody remembers, but he posed 20% tariff flat on some of the products, on like 60% of the products coming from China into the US. And that settled that kind of trade war almost ignited back then, but it settled where Trump and the Chinese came to a decision where to lower the deficit of trade in between these two countries, China will import another $150 billion worth of goods from the US into China. But I don't know if you remember, back then COVID hit.
Yeah.
People probably forgot about COVID by now, but that was the beginning of we've had a crazy 5-year kind of span where initial
Wildest
trade war,
timeline.
COVID, wars. Yeah, it's like one after the other. It doesn't end. And so because COVID hit, all imports into China kind of halted, and China never purchased more goods from the U.S. to import into China. And 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 then Trump comes back into power. Of course, we had 4 years of Biden, the wars in Russia, and then the wars in the Middle East, where they also have their own perspective of trade. Of course, there's a lot more politics in that, but the war in Russia back then stopped all trade from China through the Belt Road into Europe, and then the war in the Middle East and the Houthis stopped all trade from China into the U.S. or from the
Because
line between
that's like
India
the
and Europe.
Suez Canal. Is that why?
Yeah,
Okay.
the Suez Canal, and that's what we were experiencing even after COVID. We were still experiencing very high, expensive rates for freight, even after COVID ended. And now rates for freights went down back to what they were before COVID. So during COVID time, it was roughly $12,000 per container. During the war with the Houthis, it went down to like $8,000, $9,000 container. There's of course also the Panama Canal, which has something to do with it, and the Hong Kong company was owning it until now. Trump sold it to like BlackRock. There was an agreement over there. A lot of
Very
interesting stuff
trustworthy
on that
company
end.
that Sean loves.
Yeah, I know that you.
Yeah, I love BlackRock and Vanguard. Those guys are great.
Yeah, it's
Very trustworthy. Our best interest at heart.
It's
exactly.
really not oligarchs.
They're not Illuminati.
Yeah, but container rates went down to $1,800 to LA. So port to port, from Chinese port to Long Beach, was only $1,800 a container. So it did drop back down to pre-COVID kind of rates. But then Trump comes and slaps another tariff, flat rate tariff, 20%, I think one additional 25%. And then the reciprocal tariffs that he added, where he said half of what kind of the other countries charge the US, they will charge a reciprocal tariff on them. From all the countries, China is the only one who said no way, and and then Trump now introduced another 100% and then another 25%. So we're standing now on 145% tariff from China to the U.S. Then
And
this is a
that
very
evolved from
beautiful.
in like 1 week, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It
Like
was
every morning I
20%
couldn't
a week
sleep.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't sleep. Every morning I wake up, or before I fall asleep, Trump comes out with a new announcement. I'm like, oh my God, when is this going to end? You know? And yeah, it's been crazy. It's been crazy all over the manufacturing industry, the government. In March, I don't know if you read the news, but the Chinese government came out with reports where they declared that the initial Trump tariff did not hurt the economy, and the production in factories even went up year by year from the last year. Um, I know that for a fact. I know how they gathered this report, because the government official that is in charge of our area literally called us like a few times just to make sure that like how much money did you how much merchandise did you produce, how much merchandise did you produce, what is the exact number, and we initially said like, oh, it's going to be 3 million. We did 3 million RMB in March, and he's like, no, it's not enough. Do you have like 3.5 million? I was like, I don't know, let me recalculate, right? Because everything you declare, you eventually have to show that you did it, right? So on the export papers, so then it's like we pushed up to 3.5 and then to like 4 million RMB, where we declared, and they did this across all the factories just to show that the economy wasn't hurt by the initial tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's very scary. It's scary to the point where Walmart, and this is a whole new topic, a whole other topic that we need to discuss later on the podcast on how shipping works, right? And even Walmart is like scared shitless, doesn't know what to do. 80%, 90% of Walmart is all manufactured in China. They need to start preparing for the holiday season. What does they do? How do they import? How does they deal with it? And
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, just very, very interesting development all over China. And what do they do with it? So yeah, the funny thing is, like, we were all looking before yesterday and thinking, okay, if it's a 125 or 125% tariff, whatever it is, between China and the US, and then all other countries, they have their reciprocal tariff. Nobody in China was scared because they knew there's no replacement of China. And even if the tariffs in China are higher, the efficiency and the cost of China and the quality of goods, it still surpasses those of the other countries, even if they only have like half of the tariff. But now Trump comes up the next morning, says, China is 145%, and then
Everyone
and
else
then
drops
all the
back
other
to 10.
countries back to 10. Yeah, for 90 days, grace period. Um, so that really freaks everyone out here in China, very, very badly, because now they say, oh, now we have a competition. Chinese people in general, like, it hurts the Chinese worker, right? The Chinese bosses, they have been building up Cambodia and Vietnam, Thailand and Laos already for the past like 5 years, 6 years. They're building up factories all over those areas. So, there are ways that China can funnel goods through Vietnam, or do last stage assembly, or whatever kind of like
Yeah. So
however
it
they
says
will
made
handle
in
it.
Vietnam or
Yeah, made in Vietnam, made in Malaysia. Um, that's where we kind of like going, because we already have a Malaysian team a little bit. Um, we also going into a next step that I want to share later, which is the most exciting step I've done in the past 6 years. And yeah, so Chinese people are very stressed out about this one, and we are waiting to see what the Chinese government will do. Because in the Chinese philosophy, you cannot really stronghold, you cannot force. Like, if you go with a strength, the Chinese person will never bow. He will never say sorry. They will be like, no, they will keep up, flexing their muscles until the end. And
That's what I was talking with somebody yesterday about this, and they were asking me, what my experience was like with Chinese culture, and I had actually, through, oddly enough, World of Warcraft, I had a friend that I met through that game, and we ended up visiting with him. He lived in Los Angeles, about 100 miles north of me, and he had a very tragic story, but long story short, he was just kind of introduced me to like Chinese culture in LA, and it was awesome. And it was very, very cool, very welcoming, and everyone, and the food was ridiculous, like very good. And dude, it was awesome. I'm telling you. Yeah. And then, but I learned a lot, and I never had we'll put it this way, I never had like a negative experience at all. Like I never got into a position where it was like, where I was in an adversarial position, but I heard all sorts of things, just learning from him. And what I was talking to somebody yesterday that really brought this up, where they were like, like when you put, so Chinese people are very humble, naturally very humble, and but if you put their back to a wall, they don't back down. My mental picture was like a cougar, like if you back a cougar into a corner, it will attack you. It doesn't matter how many people you've got or what weapons you've got. It will attack. And I heard from somebody yesterday the same thing, that Chinese people will not back down due to force. And so how is the perspective of like, so what do this is like a loaded question, I guess, but like what is the Chinese perspective of Trump? Like what is he, um do they consider him like a bully, and like, he's trying to strong arm us and we can't back down from that? How do you, I guess, how do you perceive, since you're international, I just would love to know. And
Chinese people think of Trump.
yeah,
They actually like him. You
yeah,
know, they like him because they say this is a business person, and everyone was very, very happy when Trump got elected instead of Biden.
yeah,
Because when you think about it, Biden wanted to block TikTok completely. Biden didn't allow any advanced chips to go into China. He moved all the chip manufacturing, or he tried to move the chip manufacturing from Taiwan to the U.S. And also, yeah, kind of the way he interacted with their government, kind of trying to tell them what they can do, cannot do on the political landscape. They were not really happy. So I don't know if you remember, there was a very high tension, almost war, direct war with China, and Nancy Pelosi came to Taiwan. It
yeah,
was, I
yes.
think, 2022, 2023. That
Remember
was a
Chinese jets were
very,
flying over Taiwan and things like that.
yeah, yeah. But but the Biden administration was very, very aggressive against Chinese economy or the Chinese government in general, but under under the surface. So like the regular people do not really know um, what is happening, because it's like war on chips. Who knows what's going on with chips,
Yeah.
right? It's and it's war. Taiwan coming to Taiwan, not coming to Taiwan. Is the U.S. going to support it or not? Putting China in its place. And yeah, so it was very difficult, and everyone was very happy when Trump came in, because it was like, okay, this is a businessman. A
Mhm.
businessman cares for his economy, cares for his government, and we can respect that. And that's the initial standpoint of the Chinese with Trump, and that most of the Chinese people. Now, when it comes to the tariff, they're kind of pissed, right? Because they like, in their eyes at least, on the global trade kind of, obviously many people can say, yeah, China is taking big advantage from the US, right? But in their eyes, Huawei, for example, which is the biggest mobile company in China, is not allowed to sell its phones in the US. But Apple dominates China by 70%.
Yeah.
So why, like, everybody in China buys Apple's products. So why is Huawei blocked and Apple is open, right? And then China has this TikTok that is a world phenomenon, and everybody's using it. And suddenly the government is saying, 1 second, you're not allowed. We're not allowing TikTok in the U.S. unless you sell it to us, which is actually kind of understandable, because Google is not allowed in China,
Hmm.
Facebook is not allowed in China. They develop their own kind of platforms, so that's kind of understandable. But yeah, they have conflicting theories over here.
Yeah.
Many of them believe that it's the whole war is around TikTok.
Hmm.
Many of them believe that the whole war is around TikTok, because the U.S. government wants to buy TikTok, or they want TikTok to be U.S. owned, and the tariffs are kind of a lever or
Bargaining
leverage
chip,
against the Chinese economy, a bargaining chip. Yeah, once if they allow the sale of TikTok, and by the way, Amazon, 2 days ago or 3 days ago, also proposed a bid for TikTok,
Okay.
which in my eyes is a massive move because Amazon is the biggest marketplace and it doesn't have any platform
Mhm.
to sell its product. It relies on meta ads.
Wow.
So if Amazon has the power of TikTok and all sales of TikTok
Mhm.
go through Amazon, Amazon is going to literally dominate the whole market. Yeah, there will be
Yeah,
no competition.
which
So
is pretty scary.
which is,
Now,
which is
it's really curious, a very, very interesting perspective. So I guess from a bird's eye view, do you look at what Trump so I have my opinions on what these tariffs, how I view them. I certainly do not view them as a long-term play. But I do think that, people have tightened their belts and puffed up their chests, and they're like, oh yeah, and trying to look bigger and stronger and than their opponents. And there's this, like, what I call saber rattling, what I see as saber rattling, where there's this trade war happening. But the way that I look at it, like you said, Trump is a businessman and he's famous for his art of the deal and all that. I thought,
and everybody
yeah,
can say he's a businessman that went bankrupt 3 times.
yeah,
Then that side of the argument as well.
yeah.
So we don't
But
really know.
it's curious because I wonder how well. So what I see on my side, what I predict on my side is that this cannot be sustained by either country, and we have to come to an agreement for both countries to be able to move forward. Otherwise, we cripple each other, and Russia's over there laughing. But it's like, good. I guess we're
Yeah.
we're not so far behind anymore. And I think that, Trump, the way that I would imagine he could be perceived, that what he's doing is certainly scary. But do you think that it is to get Chinese people to the table and then relent? Like, it seems to me the strategy is going to be to relent for some sort of concession.
Yes.
Um, how do you perceive this?
In the same exact way. It's all a negotiation tactic. In the end of the day, in my eyes, it's not going to be sustainable. Like, I don't think it will be 145% tariff from now on, from all the way to the future. Yeah, I don't think that's sustainable to either country. It will take years to go out of it and develop, like, outside of China. But it is a tactic to bring. The question is, what does each want? We don't really know. Like, when you negotiate with someone, if each one has his wishes of what he wants to get, you can more or less figure out what is the negotiation about, where it's going to head, where it's going to go. But in this case, does Trump want? Let me ask you this question, right? Does Trump want manufacturing to go back into the USA? If yes, I would keep tariffs high on Vietnam. Both of those, okay. To 10%. What does that mean so what does Trump really want? He wants to hit
Mhm.
China hard. He's hitting China very, very hard. Um, Lowering tariffs in Vietnam and Cambodia does give China kind of a leeway to still sell its products through satellite countries. Um, it's a very, very interesting perspective. I would bet, yeah, what do the Chinese people want? Like, Chinese people, do they think they can still restrict a lot of U.S. companies, a lot of software companies, and a lot of products from coming into China, while they can freely ship everything they want into the U.S.? It's also like, is that what they really want? Do they think they can? Do they think they will get it? So it's also an interesting. Like, we don't know what is the hidden parts that we don't know about. And there are, for sure, in
Mhm.
my
Yeah.
eyes, some hidden parts that nobody knows. Like, we can only assume and estimate, or go into all the conspiracy theories, of what's actually happening. But yeah, we don't know, and it's just like, it's like a movie that is playing in front of our faces, of what is going to happen. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen next.
Well, then I have another kind of a follow-up question in similar light where, looking at President Xi Jinping, the perspective of him in the U.S., I guess I couldn't speak to that, but I can say the way that I see him is someone who is reasonable and at the same time totally unreasonable in other ways. Like it must be my way in some ways and extremely reasonable in others. And I would like to kind of hear what is your perspective on, him as a political leader in, kind of is it President Xi that's kind of standing up against Trump? Is he the one that's standing up against Trump? Is he like the bulwark, the shield for China, or is he? How do Chinese? How would you rather not? How do Chinese people view him, but how do you perceive his response to these things? And what do you think? Like, if Trump is a businessman, what is President Xi?
Wow. Now, I will answer this honestly, and it's not because I rely on China. It's not like when Musk, he doesn't say anything against China at all, right? Because he has a few $billion of a business here. But my honest opinion about we call him in China Xi Dada, the big Xi, and people love him. I personally think, if you ask my personal opinion, he is the smartest political leader in the whole world. First of all, you need to understand something about the Chinese government and how it works. From when you're young, everyone are kids, they're all born, they go to school. The top talent of each class, they kind of get scouted out at young age, and then they go to university, and they have to maintain their top scores across all university, and they have to attend all these meetings. And during university years, if they qualify, they can get accepted into a program that is like a government kind of program where these are the top talents in all the universities and they have a future in the government in whatever capacity. You might be the official government sitting in Beijing, you might be a city government, or a state government, what they have here in China. But they choose the top talent, and then the top talent from the next level up, working in the state or working in the city, is like, okay, now you high enough level, you apply, you can get to the level above that. So the government in China is built from the top people of the whole economy. It's a lot of respect. Everybody loves them, and these are top officials. And they all apply. So the 600 people that are sitting over there in the chair, they're not like in the US where you don't know who you're voting for. There's no voting. These are just the top people that applied since like childhood, since like middle school.
Mm-hmm.
They start getting scouted out. So, and it takes them 50 years to get to this position where they can actually be a decision maker. And President Xi is a top of that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And he's the top of all of that. So we're talking about, in my opinion, one of the smartest people that exists. His whole Belt and Road Initiative and how he managed to develop the whole of Africa, something that, the European countries, America, tried to do for 100 years and they couldn't develop Africa. Xi Jinping comes, within 10 years, Africa has an economy, has railways, has roads, has ports. Africa is becoming a proper economy. As a gift to the African nations, China built like the UN for Africa,
Mhm.
the United Nations of Africa, a whole massive building in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa, totally for free as a gift. And they keep developing it. Obviously, there's some strategic stuff going on over there as well. Another example, we can give a lot of examples, but between Iran and Saudi Arabia, there was war. I don't know if you remember. Everybody knows, like 3 years ago, Iran bombed a few oil refineries in Saudi Arabia. Nobody could stop them. Xi Jinping gives the phone call to Iran, says, you stop it now. We have Chinese people on the ground. We make investments. if you want our business, you stop immediately. And they stopped overnight. His ability to, but also China, since I read a research paper about it when I was in university a while back. They have this policy of the Daojiao when it comes to international politics, where they don't get involved in the politics of the country.
Mm-hmm.
They say, we want to do business with you. Let's do business. If you harm business, it's bad. But whatever you decide to do in your country, they don't get involved. So that's another policy that he carries. Also internally, inside the country, there was a lot of monopolistic behavior in the past few years of Alibaba that where he completely broke them and took down. I mean,
it's kind of like a
many
monopoly.
people will say,
there was one more that was that what it was? Jack Ma and his organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that is very questionable. What happened back then? Like, should you do that or should you not? But he Alibaba became so powerful, he literally broke them up. And
It's the equivalent of
this
Amazon in China.
The equivalent of Amazon, but much bigger than Amazon.
Okay.
Like a lot bigger, a lot more powerful than Amazon, because all payments, all wallets, all transportation, all purchases, all international trade, all banking, everything went through Alibaba. So it's like, okay, one second, you gotta stop it. Obviously, there's a lot to say about that, and if it was right or wasn't right. But Chinese companies, they became so big, and he was the one who says you took it too far. And this year, he did a meeting with all the top business people of China, like Baidu, Tencent, Alibaba as well. Even Jack Ma came to the meeting, where he promised and he said, this year we finished cleaning up corruption, we finished cleaning up monopolistic behavior in companies. Now it's time. I promise there will be nothing internally to damage you. You can grow your business now and go and like move forward as fast as you can. Also for us as a factory, like I was talking to my friend right now because he moved to the US to Detroit area. He was working in what is it called, the one that do the Intel. He was working in one of the sub companies of Intel in China, and they moved him to the US. And I was just talking to him about it right now. Yeah, just before this call. And like the way the Chinese government operates to stimulate business is exceptional. I come with a business. The Chinese government last year came to me and gave me a grant for 200,000 RMB, which is not a lot. It's like $30,000. But they said they went to my landlord and they gave my landlord $30,000 towards my rent. They said, we like this business. It's doing well for the economy. Here, $30,000 grant.
Wow.
And then they said, if we reach 100 million RMB for consecutive 2 years, it will give us land to build our own factory, develop our own industrial zone, all for free. Yeah, that's like the dream. That's what we want to achieve, or wanted at least. But the subsidiaries and the support, like they come to you, they visit you, they tell you, do you need anything? Government officials, they pop up to your office. Sometimes unannounced, say like, how is everything going? Do you need anything? Do you have enough electricity? Do you need a discount on something? Do you have any problem? And they come to support you. And in the US, because I don't know if they have these programs.
If you see a government worker at your business in the US, you are not happy. You're like, they're not there to give you something.
Yeah. So yeah, I think like as a political leader, he's exceptional. What is he going to do with Trump, and how is he going to deal with him? I'm very curious to see. I'm very, very curious to see, because I really respect his way of thinking. And like Trump is, I was surprised. Honestly, I was always on the fence if Trump knows what he's doing or he's just like bullshitting every day when he wakes up. And now after the last move where he removed all tariffs for everyone, I was like, that's a very good negotiation tactic.
Yeah.
And so it's very interesting to see.
Now, I think what's happening in the US, we see a lot of, I've seen in terms of understanding what's the kind of end motive here. I don't think it is about bringing manufacturing back to the US because it seems too aggressive. I think if that was the original intent, it would be done gradually over a long period of time because it really took, already from the 1970s up till the 1990s for China to become the predominant manufacturing hub of the world and kind of move manufacturing out of the US, which really started with the Jimmy Carter administration under Henry Kissinger. They kind of pushed a lot of US manufacturing to China. So it would take decades to actually bring it back to the US. So I think there's something else going on here. But I've seen a lot of I don't know, criticisms or the idea in the US by some people that this is a good thing, bringing manufacturing back to the US because the conditions in China are so bad for its workers. You know, you've got slave labor, you've got sweatshops. So bringing it back to the US where people are treated, rightly, maybe speak into that because I think that's certainly a perception the West has of China. Yeah. So, I know that you obviously run a factory. I've seen lots of factories in China that people are pretty happy. I know we've already covered this in our previous podcast, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning this again because that is a criticism a lot of people in the West have with China is that they don't particularly treat their workers particularly well. You're a factory owner in China. How your work is treated?
They're treated exceptionally well. We have the Disney.
Of course, you'd say that.
Certificates. You have the VSPI. I promise. I don't employ any slaves. We pay them very good money. They get like 6,000 RMBs. Assembly line workers get 6,000 RMB a month, which is equivalent to now $800-900 a month. The regular workers, machine operators, get like 10 to 15,000 RMB, which is like $1,500 to $2,000. The factory manager gets like 30,000 RMB, which is close to like 4,000 almost. It's close to 3,000 now. Oh no, almost 4,000. So yeah, they get treated very well, and they have room and board. So they have room to sleep. We give them accommodation. We give them subsidized food in our industrial zone, so they can buy like a meal for $1.50. They're pretty happy, it was funny because last year we had Forrest coming over to the factory just to check stuff out, and he posted a video of the assembly line, and people were starting to comment how like, oh, look at these people, they're not happy working, and I'm like, listen, if you work 10 hours in an assembly line moving stuff from the assembly line into the box, it's like, I don't know if you will have a smile on your face after 2 months, It's just the nature of the job where you just keep doing it. But yeah, workers, they're pretty, like, also workers now have the power over the factories. You need to understand, like, there are not a lot of workers. We need to compete for the same workforce. A lot of the Chinese young people don't come to work. They don't want to work in a factory. All of them are university students. Why will they come work in an assembly line? So we rely on people above 45, above 50, and that population is decreasing. So we end up sharing a pool of workers or competing on the same workforce, which increases their salary. Yeah. So yeah, the only slaves. Yeah, I don't know. I can't I know like it's not a slave, but in the prison program in Dongguan, because one of my friends works in the prison over there. So in the prison program, they do have programs where the workers go and work in side gigs, and they earn a few pennies and stuff. But that's very common practice also in the U.S. It was very famous where Kamala Harris kept a few more people. I mean, according to the news, I don't know about that, but Californian prisons definitely use their road work and stuff like that.
Yeah. One thing I regularly deal with is in my, my factory is Longpack, and that's producing Deliverance, and they have excellent conditions for their workers. And every time I talk with them, they're happy. Like, they come to, like, anybody who comes to the US, like at Gamma or whatever, they're always happy to see me. They're happy about what they do. They're very passionate about what they do. And I remember talking with you, maybe this was at Gamma, maybe it was even before, last year, but you had shared with me a lot. I've learned a lot from you about the the mentality of the Chinese worker and how they really take a lot of pride in what it is that they do. Like what you shared with me is what the Chinese worker does is a part of who they are. And you taught me a word mafan, which was troubles, which is translated troublesome, right? Something like that. Where when someone that, let's say the person that I'm working with, my representative, I'm giving them I'm upset because the delays are, every email I send is angry and frustrated and whatever. Then that person reaching out to me, they'll have extreme levels of anxiety and they won't reach out, and
They love to satisfy the needs of people. It's a culture that it's all about satisfying the other. It's a commune in the end of the day. So if somebody is angry at you, you feel anxious, you feel sad. You don't necessarily want to deal with this energy.
Mhm.
So
And
yeah, you
And then the only way you mentioned to remedy the situation is to apologize, to recognize your own your basically your negativity, apologize, and then change. It's really repentance is what fixes a situation like that. So if ever anybody listening to this, if ever you feel like you're not getting communication from your factory, it's probably not because they don't care about you. It's probably because they have anxiety because of how you treat them. There's this kind of an American way where it's I want to be a businessman, I want to be tough and get what I need, and kind of sometimes twist people's arm to get what I need. And that mentality really doesn't work very well in my view as a small business owner in working with Chinese people. It's much more about giving grace and very much appreciating even the little things that they do. There's not an email that I send that doesn't include a thank you or I'm really happy that you've worked so hard, or these are excellent, this is good. These things need changing, but these are real, these, like, those minis are have these corrections that need to be issued, and then but these over here are fantastic. And then like I had an email back, one of my miniatures is so funny. I must have sent my STL files for miniatures. I had these two lions, these winged lions, Nebuchadnezzar the winged lion. One was like, so they're both meant to be 35 millimeter scale, and one was like 50 millimeter scale, and another one was like 10 millimeter scale. It was so funny. It was like a tiny little baby lion. And I was like, this is obviously wrong. And I was like, what happened? So I sent them a picture. I was like, I'd like these guys to be the same, like 35. Like, can you give this guy a haircut and then add all the hair to the other one, And so we talked about that. And then they said, yes, we can. It's going to be, there's going to be a fee to change it. And the natural response of the American might be that, or anybody really, running a small business on limited funds and everything, is frustration. Like, how dare you charge me more? You were supposed to get it right the first time and blah blah blah. But no, you cannot act like that to your factory. You have to say, that is okay. I didn't even see a price. And I was like, this is totally understandable. Absolutely. Do what you got to do and let me know what it costs and I'll pay. And they came back to me like a day later. My miniature molds were probably about $40,000. Just that I prepaid for, to get the process started. And this adjustment, there were several that needed adjustment because I had sent the STL files sized, and they just did everything to size. And it was like $190 to change. It's like, no problem, no problem at all. Like, and really that is not even worth causing a stink over. If I had to pay $190 extra to have my miniatures done right, and there are obviously some sort of costs. But what I found, and actually you taught me this about my Deliverance, the first wave of Deliverance miniatures, of which I actually have a few.
lacking.
Yeah,
The details of the wings were very not so clear.
yeah, and you said, actually, you showed me that there was the last time there was a factory that they long pack kind of subcontracted for miniatures, and they messed up one of the molds, and it was like a $3,000 expense that they just ate. They did not ask me to pay for it. And there are many. Yeah. So yeah, the long fact made them do it. But I felt very valued out, especially after hearing because you walked in to this subcontractor because you were considering using them for your miniature production, and found that Longpack. You told me that Longpack really took care of you in this situation because they didn't forward these costs onto you. And I think that there are a lot of things that can happen when your factory sees you as a blessing rather than a curse. Makes a huge difference, right? So yeah, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, like how do we solve the problem? And I think this is one of the bigger announcements for me at this point, where like I'm looking at all this political landscape and all this uncertainty and really the immense wish of the US people to have production in the US. You know, like now I'm a business owner, right? What do I decide? Do I open a factory in Vietnam? Do I open a factory in Malaysia, which I can for sure, no problem? Or do I say, one second, let me evaluate if I can open a factory in the US for board games, and what will that look on the landscape of a business plan? And what do we need in order to achieve that point? You know, um, and I so Sean, back to your point, like because you were mentioned because I was talking in the past, this already for the past 4 months I'm investigating this, and like one of the key problems that you have in the US is production in the US stopped in the 80s. Yeah, 70s, 80s, production starts stopping, meaning US factories stopped growing, stopped investing into their own facilities, into their own machines in the 80s. What, like, in the past 40 years, there was so much progress of machines. When I'm talking to US professionals in the packaging industry and all of those, I'm looking at their machines and I'm saying that these machines are so old, I don't even recognize them. And so yeah, the question is like, okay, can you develop the US? And obviously it will not happen immediately, right? It will be a progress for US factories and for US manufacturing. I think I'm in a key position because our Southeast Asia supply chain is so vast, and I've been living here for 10 years. So like I can literally do whatever I want in Southeast Asia. And then I'm coming with all this knowledge, and I'm looking at the US factory and I'm 1 second, why are you doing it this way? Why are you not doing it that way? Why are you having this machine? I can buy the same machine in China for a fraction of the cost. Like if a US company wants to buy a new machine, they need to invest $80,000, right? Because they need to talk to somebody on Alibaba who maybe yes, maybe no, test this machine, test that machine. I already know where I bought all my current machines, and I know which machine works and which machine doesn't. So for me to buy a machine is a $5,000 investment, or depending on the machine, right? We have these big machines, which are not necessarily needed at the beginning. So, like, yeah, I'm gonna move production slowly in steps into the US. That's my final decision.
Exciting! Wow.
Yeah. And by that also lowering, like, customers don't need to worry about tariffs. They don't need to worry about the global supply chain. What is going to happen next? We have 90 days grace period. What happens after the 90 days? What happens if you start manufacturing in Vietnam, and then Trump wakes up, says, you know what, Vietnam is not coming well. I don't like it anymore.
Yeah.
Boom, 100% tariffs. You get stuck. Like all the products now are in China. A lot of these big publishers, a lot of these big companies, forget about publishers, they're holding their stock in China for storage, waiting for the tariffs to settle. And so, and I believe that, like, I came to the calculation where I would be able to produce the same games that I produce in China in the US for 60% extra of the cost of the Chinese factory. You know, Obviously, it will be with help from different Southeast East Asia countries as well as China, but slowly, like, move in 3 steps. So first we do the box, and cardboard components in the US. Maybe not token sheets because they're very detailed, but the simple cardboard components. And then the box we do in the US, and assembly we do in the US, right? And then step number two, you look at the operations, you have more orders, you have larger scale. You say, okay, let me invest in machines and automation, because now, like, I can build, if I want, if I had a big enough order, I can build a fully automated assembly line. Instead of having 12 workers standing, you have like 3 machine operators, or 1 machine operator, two pre-assembled people, and then like 10 machines that do it. And I could, like, if the scale is large enough, so you can, technology is like Elon Musk the other, like, 3 months ago introduced this new robot that can do a lot of stuff. Because until now, the problem with robots is each hand can do one task. But now you suddenly have a robot that can do 2 or 3 tasks. They become smarter. When you put in, if Grok ever, I don't know if Grok, Elon Musk, he's very controversial at the moment, but like AI stuff, if AI gets integrated with machines, you will have suddenly a machine that can do a lot more, and you start producing in the US for the next step. Obviously, every machine needs operators, so it's not like the job is going away, right? But you start bringing in like more and more of the operations into the US. Another example is, and this is like a super clear example, like cardboard. In China, it costs me around $400 or 300 to $400 for a ton of cardboard when I buy a big ton of cardboard. In the US, it costs me $1,000. But if I came to the US cardboard mill and I tell them, listen, I have 100 ton of cardboard that I need to order from you, he's for sure going to, more or less make the same price as Chinese cardboard plus shipping the Chinese cardboard or the European cardboard into the US. He will be able to, because European cardboard is like $600. Only US cardboard is $1,100. So it will be like, the more you bring into the US, the more the US can scale and slowly lower its costs. And I think, yeah, so it's going to be in like our facility, or what I envision for the US facility is first like do the box and cardboard in the US and final assembly. Plastic, we just need to make the molds. Like plastic is a perfect example because you have a lot of idle injection machines sitting in the US, right? You just need to make the molds, bring it into the US, use the machines in the US to do the injection. So you can slowly convert the operations until you find a perfect balance. And I think that will be a massive move on, like, I believe it's possible. The only thing that suddenly hurt me was like, because I'm making all these plans for the past 3 months, I'm working on it, talking to people. The facility is going to be in New Jersey, by the way. I'm talking to all these partners, to all the people in the Rust Belt, because the Rust Belt is dead. They're buildings that are empty, people with no jobs. Suddenly you're talking to all of them. They haven't worked for 20 years in their industries and not as efficient. So yeah, you slowly need to put it into shape. And yeah, I just think it's going to be it's a vision that is very exciting. But then Trump lowering all the VAT and all the tariff on Vietnam kind of tells me, once I need to second guess myself. Now I need to second guess myself, because one second, why do I bother with the US when I can go to the Vietnam, right? But I still feel like maybe the US is the right choice compared to Vietnam or to Malaysia. Vietnam is also very old industry. All the machines are very old. You need to make the same investment in Vietnam as you would do in the US. The only difference is in the US, people are, I don't want to say smarter, um, I don't want to I don't want to say smarter, or but maybe easier to work with than training a whole new Vietnamese workforce on how to work on it.
Just everything that you're saying is so educational to me, and it's not a perspective that I hear often. It's just a really, really excellent. It's good to have another perspective and to hear, how even during such a tumultuous time that there's such opportunity, that you see such opportunity. You're a solid businessman. You've got a business mind, and the fact that you see opportunity in the midst of this. I think a lot of people have kind of lost hope in a lot of ways. Like when you look at social media, especially when it comes to board game publisher spaces, you'll have like official announcements of publishers that are very, very upset, and they say things like, I don't know what to do. I was talking to big publishers that have product that's manufactured that they can't get on a boat in time, and now it's what do? I don't have an option to not ship. Yes, you do. You have to store your stuff maybe, but that's actually what I wanted to get into. Maybe we could start beginning to talk about solutions for publishers. If you could maybe start here and then go and expand into like what can publishers do to survive and weather this storm, as well as how can we be better afterward. So if you want to just start tackling that, any aspect you want to start with is good.
But like last time, I'll tell you my reservation of like this is what bothers me a little bit in the industry also, and like you were saying, also social media is extremely negative, and I feel it because in the beginning when Trump did the 20% tariff, right, we like guaranteed a contain because we knew a lot of our publishers were having extreme problems with
Mhm.
with their logistics, and they didn't know what to do, and we partner up. We have a warehouse in California, right? So we are perfect for consolidation. We consolidate everything. I'll tell you also the next level of what we're doing, but we consolidate a lot of our goods together, and we managed to guarantee in March a container cost to California for $6,000, meaning your goods for a whole container will cost $6,000 to reach California. If you produce with Hero Time, obviously, because Hero Time is the importer in the
Mhm.
U.S. So it's like Hero Time exports and imports.
Mhm.
So it kind of matches. Um, and then I got a lot of backlash. I was surprised because for me it was like if I were a game creator and I had stock in China that I had to move to the U.S. and suddenly Trump raises my prices by $4,000 on it, or $1,000 or $10,000. Now it's reached the point where it's $40,000 extra.
Yep.
I would find this if I was a businessman and if I was a business owner and if I had responsibility towards my customers, I would try to find any solution possible. But when I proposed a solution in March, I got a lot of like feedback. Oh, you lying, you cheating. There was a lot of what are you doing? How are you doing it? Everybody's starting to question you,
Mhm.
and uh, so like obviously there were a lot of game creators. We saw a spike when
Mhm.
we posted this on social media, so we did see a spike of like an additional maybe 300 people that visited our website during that, and we had a few more requests. We had like another 20 new leads that reached out, and we did offer them the solution, but there was also a lot of backlash from people.
Want to
Yeah,
continue
like
there?
I've had a mix of like some people said, "Oh, thank you so much," and they really did contact us, and we did manage to help them. Some were very like negative about it, and obviously it's social media, so I stay away from social media, and I let Pablo, who's been interacting on social media for the past 5 years. He's a top contributor for the Board Game Design Lab. Interact and take all that heat and feedback, and he just like notified me of what everyone is saying. But then it kind of like took me aback, and I said, okay, what's happening here? Um, so that kind of bothered me a little bit. But I realized that we don't live in a perfect world, and there will always. I mean, people can have their own perspective. I don't judge them for that at all, but it's like it makes me cautious because now like do I tell you my solutions or will this turn around and everybody will say like oh this first guy is
Mhm.
is not is not worth his salt, so like it's a bit I get a bit of a reservation from it, but generally for publishers I would say we have a three-step solution. I would say it this way: if they do want to solve this problem. However, Walmart, like this problem, Walmart has. You're a small publisher. How much do you import into the U.S.? 5 pallets. What is this worth? $50,000 max. Walmart imports 150 containers a week or a month. You know what? Like, what is they gonna do? And I know how Walmart is handling it because part of my what I've done in the past like 3 weeks since Trump raised from, because when Trump raised 20%, we could handle it in hero time. We could say, okay, hero time internally can handle this additional 20% tariff by both being the manufacturer and the importer into the US. Everything is under our own bonds. And people need to understand the concept of a bond. So whenever you import into the US, you have an importer's account and you have a bond associated with it. And each bond is worth a certain amount of money, depending on how much you import. If you're a first-time creator, you have a one-time bond. Of course, the custom clearance agents will be looking at your bond very closely, saying, "1 second, how much did he actually pay for the games? How much is he actually declaring?" But once you are manufacturer and you've been importing into the U.S. board games for 5 years, and you never lied, and everything went smoothly, the custom clearance are more like, "Okay, yeah, you said this game is." So my concept is, I'm sorry, it's like a little all over the place. Was if you order from us quantity of 3,000 games, right? We would come and say the value of your game is not what you paid, but the value of the game is what it would have been if you would have ordered 1,000,000 copies or 100,000 copies, you know?
Mhm.
And because we as a manufacturer and we as the importer, we're able to do that. Now, for the customer, it doesn't make a difference because the customer pays our US bank account, right? So
Mhm.
there's like no records of him putting orders in China, and paying money into China or into Hong Kong, wherever it is, and then like dealing with imports. Because we deal everything in-house, um, there's no relation to him. The customer simply gets the goods to his doorstep, including tariff, including everything.
Mhm.
And that was all good when Trump did like 20%. But once Trump went into like the 54% zone and 100% zone, we had to collaborate, and we just signed an agreement with one of the biggest shipping companies. It's called Prime Ship,
Mhm.
primeship.delivery, and they do over 150 containers a month. One of Walmart buyers is one of their customers. They have like 250,000 square foot of a warehouse, just so you understand the scale. And they have containers leaving, 2, 3 containers a day into the US, some into Europe. So they're massive. And obviously, whatever they can do in customs is what Hero Time, like, if we are good until 20% tariff, they can handle 50, 100% tariff as well. So we started collaborating with Prime Ship, and they can really solve a lot of the services directly to the end customer, clearing everything on their bonds. So if I was a game creator now with stock sitting in China, I would probably first store. They can store games. They can store for 2, 3 months. It's like $15 a pallet, or $18 a pallet, give or take. And after the tariff go down a little bit or become a little more reasonable, then they ship everything to your door, lowering the overall cost. If you're shipping a whole container, it becomes a little more challenging. But if you ship like 3 pallets at a time, and you take these 3 pallets and you mix them with many other goods, so you mix them with maybe clothing is not the smartest because the tariff on clothing is better, but like general goods, um, you would be able to overall lower the value of the container to the point where you're saving money at the tariff. You see, so it, and so that's kind of a solution, a first solution, an initial solution I would offer board game creators that are stuck with existing merchandise in China and they don't know how to get it out. So it will be like, contact them, Prime Ship, or you want our help, you can also help us out. But like, you contact Prime Ship, they pick up your games from whatever warehouse you need in China. They store it for you for 1 month, 2 months, or if you want to ship it immediately, they can ship it immediately. And the cost per pallet is roughly $1,100, $1,200, depending on where you live, per pallet,
Mhm.
give or take. So it's not as and you can fit, if you have a big game like Deliverance, you probably fit you fit 200 games on a pallet, right?
Some
For
between
Deliverance.
1 and 200, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, but if you have like a normal size game,
Right. Way more.
I see. Yeah, you can fit a lot more. If you have a small game, 1 pallet can hold 2,000 games also. So that would be an initial solution I would offer a lot of the game creators. that are stuck with existing stock in China and they don't know what to do. So yeah, that will be a first option for them. Yeah, does it make sense, or I confused?
It does. Yeah, that's interesting. It's what you're doing is you are first combining your more expensive items with less expensive items, and you're paying an average for the container. Is that correct?
Yes, and depending on and yeah, and then it lowers the overall cost
Mm-hmm.
for all the merchandise, and it's totally above board and it's totally normal. And like if you have 100 different shipments in one container, there's no way for the custom clearance to determine, okay, 1 second, this game is worth $20. Impossible that it's
Mm-hmm.
worth $7 or $8. And the beautiful part is, it's not on you to import it.
Mm-hmm.
It's this massive company imports 150 containers. Just for reference, Amazon does Amazon does 10,000, more or less 10,000 containers. Last year they did 3,000, or 2 years ago, AGL, they did around 2,000 containers every month. Now they bought their own fleet of they chartered their own freight boats, and they reached Amazon AGL with AWD. They're doing like 10,000 containers. So obviously, the bigger you become, the more power you have
Mm-hmm.
in custom clearance. And probably, if I assume correctly, Amazon will be able to declare the value of their container for maybe $20,000,
Yeah.
or $15,000, depending on the stuff in it. If you import pillows, it will be cheaper. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
um, that's more or less the idea behind the very powerful consolidation that an individual company cannot do, while like massive shippers can actually perform it much better. So
So
that would
then
be definitely my first solution.
so this is a good solution for people that funded so for myself, I'll have a manufacturing order of $200,000, which becomes 400,000, which quickly makes it impossible for me to I'll take several containers on my own probably. Last time with the deliverance, we did 2 containers. I want to say 2 full containers, or 1.5, something like that. Maybe we actually, no, we did 1 container floor loaded, so to the US, and that's how we managed to save, because I was about $9,000 for a container, and so we didn't want to have to get a second container and fill part or fill. So we palletized in the US. We actually had bridge distribution palletize once they got to the US, all of our product. And but so there are a lot of creators that make, $100,000 or less, let's say, on their crowdfunding campaign, and they don't have wiggle room for another 125% tariff, 145%, or even 20% is a lot of can be a significant chunk out of their margins when they're at lower, unit quantity. And so this is a normal thing to consolidate. You only purchase half a container or only a quarter of a container, and this is normal. But when you get to work with maybe going through you or going through Prime Ship, you're gonna be able to do this. And then the normal way that they operate, they're not going, if they, like you said, if they have 100 different products in a single container, the way that they the customs declaration, the way that they write that is going to be probably an average cost of all the things in the container. And I think that is such a smart solution for the small creator. So let's go on to step number 2. Like, so you mentioned this is very powerful. And by the way, real quick pit stop, can people contact you about this to learn more? They just go to herotime1.com. Or
They can go to eurotime1.com and contact us directly if they only want the shipping. But they can also go to primeship.delivery and contact them directly. Like I'm not hiding it and forcing people to, they have to use us. My collaborations that I signed with Primeship was for me to oversee their gaming, because they never did games before.
Mhm.
Maybe they did some toys, small little toys that were shipped to Amazon, to Walmart and stuff, but they never like did board games, proper board games. So one of my one of the stuff that I did with them was like, listen, I have a lot of board games and I need to ship, but I don't trust. Like I have very strict rules, simple rule, yeah. But you will find it like, of course, but maybe Chinese shippers don't really realize it. How do you load a 45 HQ container? It's very tall. It reaches 245, like 2 meters 45, so it reaches 8 foot. How does a Chinese guy who is like 5 foot tall take a carton that is 20 kilos or 40 pounds and load it onto onto a 7 foot location spot? So what do?
Yeah.
They step on the freaking they load one, they load another one, and they use the cartons as steps in order to yeah, right. And I was like, listen, this cannot happen. So I go there and I say, this area is mine. This is treated differently. This is sensitive, not sensitive goods. Sensitive goods are different, but these goods can be damaged very easily. A dent in a box gives the backers a feeling of, okay, this is the ship. This is the ship product. So like for me, I bought for them ladders. I said, this is an opening ladder. You pull it and you step on it. I don't want nobody steps on cartons anymore. No foot. Another thing, and that's where Moco Logistics come into the picture, because last year I invested $50,000 into the warehouse with Eric Chen, who right now he has a campaign on Kickstarter
Like
called
a logistics
Starly.
company.
Yeah, Moco
Okay, yeah,
Logistics,
yeah.
and he handles.
Uh-huh.
You heard of him?
Yeah. I met him at Gamma, actually.
Yeah. So he's like the nicest guy ever. And last year we invested together roughly $150,000 into a U.S. facility warehouse in California, which California has its benefit because it's the closest point to China. Yeah, when you
Yep.
want to ship into the eastern coast, then you got to go either through Panama or through the Red Sea. And so California is very strategically located, and we invested a lot of money into a warehouse over there. And now he handles all the shipping, all the fulfillment in all of North America. So Prime Ship to get. So for me, I'm talking Prime Ship, and I'm saying, listen, I want all my games, treated properly. Nobody's like throwing them around. Nobody's picking up a container. Like FedEx sometimes throws a package over the fence
Yep.
out to your door. Nothing like that. And then it all goes into Moco Logistics. And Moco Logistics overviews the whole stock. If there's any damage, you got to pay for that damage, So I introduced them to this whole new industry that they never accessed before. And with like our strict rules of how they should operate, they were very happy about it, because for them, obviously, it's also like for everyone is tight. They're afraid for their business. What will happen in 2-3 months? So yeah, they were very happy for that cooperation, and I think it's working quite well. In between all of them. So yeah, you can contact them either directly or through Hero Time, and it's the same. It's the same for us, more or less. But yeah, I'm not hiding it. If you're producing in Longpack, or you're producing in Boda, or producing in Panda, if you're producing in Panda, your prices are the highest. Which is, whatever I have to say about that is a different topic, right? Like Panda is the factory I respect the most in China. I think it's a number one factory, and then Hero Time is number 2.
Yeah.
But side note, yeah. So I really, really respect them. Like I've been to their factory twice. Incredible QC, the admin work. They're not the most efficient, but they're like so much respect to what they do. Like they're the only factory that can handle seriously heavy games.
Yeah.
Right. Like Stonemaier games.
Mm-hmm.
Panda can handle. I wouldn't even dare. Like before, remember when you contacted me about Deliverance, and I was like, man, I don't know. This game is complicated. So yeah, like, but if you produce with them, the value of your game, I don't know, will be $25. So you can use Prime Ship and maybe cut your tariffs by 200%.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's so I'm not holding these cards for myself. Like everybody can use it. And I think, I think that's a pretty good solution for creators that already produce their games, and their games are sitting in the U.S. and they have no idea what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
A second option, and if you have a full container, like if you have 3-4 containers, there's another option of 3-4 containers or even one full container of the same product. So you cannot declare like a low average value of the container. There are immediate solutions you can take for that. Solutions, like there are two solutions that I would recommend. Like there's one solution I would not really recommend, but there's another solution that is a viable solution in my eyes, and that is transloading. Meaning, this is the thing: transloading. You gotta when you transload. So there are trade-free zones. Like I don't know if the U.S. has trade-free zones, but trade-free zones are situated strategically all over Asia. So like Vietnam will have one in Ho Chi Minh. Singapore will have one. Malaysia will have one. China has 2 or 3, depending on which location. And these free trade zones, they're basically, some of them are commercial and industrial. Some of them are just free trade zone. But basically, you can import goods into that country, into that free trade zone, with no custom clearance of that country, with no VAT, no duty, nothing. So basically, what you do, and companies do it. But again, if I say this, I will get so much. People would say, I don't know what they will say on social media if they hear the solution, but what you can do is you take your goods from China into wherever you want, Malaysia, let's say, because Malaysia is the easiest for me because we already have a Malaysian team, and you have an industrial zone over there. They unpack the games, they repack the games in Malaysia, so there's an additional value created in Malaysia. So they will buy the shipping cartons, or they will buy the shrink wrap, and they do the final shrink wrap. If you need to change your box, right, because your box is made in China, maybe you want to change it to made in Malaysia, which is a little tricky. I wouldn't necessarily like. This is where it's a bit iffy on, a little like scary.
The term is, I believe, you have to add quote unquote significant value to a product in order to say this is made in Malaysia, or right.
Yeah. But this is where, like, before, used to be the transloading used to be no added value. Simply take it off the container, load it onto a new container, and it still says made in China. But now it's not going to go. So you do need to add a significant value in a certain country in order to ship it out. And then a whole container like that, depending on how many, like not including the labor cost, the container from Malaysia or Vietnam or Singapore. Like I wouldn't go for Singapore because it's expensive, but the whole container from there to the U.S., let's say East Coast, will be roughly West Coast, California, will be roughly $12,000. This journey of the whole container, right? So obviously, if you have a full container and you got to pay Tyrese $40,000, this doesn't seem like too much money. Maybe additional labor costs where you do the actual assembly in that location, right? You do some real additional value. You can do that and then ship through Malaysia.
There is a company, Button Shy Games. What they do, they make really small games for like very very low prices, and they import. They have all of their, I believe it's their card stock. Everything on card stock is printed in China and then shipped for all of their games. And then they have their warehouse in the U.S. where they bring like the boxes, and they manufacture boxes locally, and they separate out all of the cards for each game, and then get they've manufactured boxes here in the US, and it says made in the USA, even though the card stock is made in China. Then everything else is made locally.
This is exactly what I'm planning on doing for the Hero Time USA. And we check the legal terminology. So you have like made in the USA, which is like fully made in. You can't a real added value, right? And that's you got to consult a lawyer if you're allowed to say, like, on the box you can definitely print made in the USA, but like stamp US made in the USA stamp, like an official stamp, that will be a little tricky. But you do have the concept of made in the USA by imported and domestically manufactured components, something along those lines, which is a perfect middle ground. And in my opinion, it's a middle ground that Trump is aiming for, like following our previous discussion. because you cannot manufacture everything as the U.S. Right? The U.S. did not reach this level of efficiency. But that's exactly what I'm planning to do for the U.S. facility, where whatever we cannot make in the U.S. we make in China, or we make in Southeast Asia a little bit. I'm going to Vietnam on Monday. Eric, also from Sabotage, is getting married, and his father-in-law is a Chinese person who lives in Vietnam. So I'm going to visit them. We're going to and he has a plastic factory, believe it or not.
Okay.
So he cannot make miniatures because miniatures, they're very, very detailed, but he can make like good plastic pieces, general ones. So like we're discussing what machines to buy, what stuff to maybe do some stuff in Vietnam with his supervision, so we still know it's like handled by Chinese professionals rather than like, okay, let me go back 20 years in the past and find a Vietnamese guy and start training him all over again. It becomes so it's very tricky. Whoever promises production in Vietnam you really need to investigate what exactly does he do in Vietnam. Does he just outsource to a Vietnamese factory and then quality control might have issues? Did they build their own facility in Vietnam to monitor everything? What operations do they do there? Printing in Vietnam is terrible. All their machines are old Kimori Japanese machines or old Chinese machines. In China, all the printing machines are Heidelberg. Not all of them, but like most of the printing machines, like if you go to Panda, if you come to us, all the machines are Heidelberg machines, like German made.
Yeah.
So so you want to really, I mean, it
German
takes somebody with
engineering, very famous.
I'm geeking out a little bit on the details.
Yeah.
I apologize about that.
Well,
But
if not for you, we would never have these details on the show. I mean, that's what we bring people on like you are experts in their field to talk about this stuff. So this is great for me. I'm enjoying every moment of this. Yeah. So carry on.
Yeah. So the plan is to kind of create this network between China, whatever China is awesome at, whatever Vietnam can produce, and then open an assembly line and glue boxes in the U.S. This way you lower, because the problem with the U.S. factories is their costs are double or triple the cost of what would you get a product in China. Like even with the tariff, like 145% tariff, the U.S. factories still cannot compete with the Chinese price. That's the crazy part. Yeah. So really, it has to be incremental, where you slowly move more and more into the U.S. and the more orders you get. So when you do 1 million games a year, when you reach a point of 1 million games, that's the point where you can start scaling your production.
Yeah.
Like even, I don't know if you know, but even for the robots, like I considered buying robots last year for my assembly line, right? And then we did like very close analysis and calculation. How much money would I need to spend on robots? How much money will I need for the machine operator? And then how many games do I need to produce a year in China to afford the robots? And it reaches 1 million games. That's more or less the and it's better if it's 1 million copies of the same game, or at least like 200,000 of this, 200,000 of that, but 500 pieces, it's not even worth adjusting the machines for it. You're just gonna go like, okay, I'll just place it manually. So it's a fine balance. The more games coming in, the more stuff we can slowly scale the US. I think it will be like a 3-4 year plan of establishing a real proper like made in the USA stamp kind of game in cheap, affordable prices.
That's awesome. Now, another question that I have related to a solution that I was proposed by Longpack. So I asked them the question, what can you guys do to help me, through these tariffs? What options do you have? I thought, there are some, I've heard rumors of some factories, maybe subsidizing or taking part of the tariff on themselves or whatever. Totally don't know if that's the case or not. But then, I asked, and at the time, tariffs were 54%. And so they're significant. I thought there's no way Longpack can take just 54% of my cost and just eat it. They'd basically be paying me for me to make games with them. And so the question that I had for them was like, how can you help? What solutions do you have? They forwarded me to a specialist in the long pack team that's really on this, and I could tell right away they've been really scrambling, really thinking through like, how can we do this? How can we help and whatnot? And so they proposed to take a portion of whatever I print with them and say these are service-based administrative costs, and then the other portion is the actual production cost that would be declared in customs, which made sense to me because if, for example, I put $40,000 in molding and whatnot for miniatures, and then I put other fees, I paid $250 for my metal coin molding, and then $1,500 for my aluminum mold, and for the insert. It starts to make sense, and I thought, okay, but I think what they're doing is they are declaring only the value per unit of the game rather than excluding those molding costs. The molding costs are already excluded. That it's just price per produced unit, and then they're taking 10% and saying this is service based, administrative things like adjusting the machines and doing things like that, and then the actual cost of production. So if my thing was let's say $15 to produce per unit, they would say $1.50 of that is actually the service based administrative work that a human had to do, and then 90% is the actual production and customs value. So the declared value per unit would be $13.50. Is this ethical? What are your thoughts on that? And do you have some sort of solution that is kind of similar? Or I would love to get your feedback.
That's a decent solution, actually. It wouldn't be too bad. And I think $13 for it's similar to the solution that I gave initially, where like we declare the value of your game at 1 million copies, or the 200,000 copies, whatever is reasonably accepted. The only problem that you will have is if you import under your own bond. And I know that Longpack is not taking the risk here.
Right.
They're shipping to you. So yeah, they will declare lower. Okay. But you're the one importing in the US. And if you are a one-time importer, if you have a one-time bond, which you do, because you never crossed $500,000 in imports, I assume.
I used, by the way, a company called Compass Logistics to get product into the US. So Bridge Distribution had a partnership with Compass Logistics. Compass, each factory, or I'm sorry, each warehouse in various regions, like Happy Shops in the EU is who I used, Aetherworks in Australia, Bridge Distribution in the US. They each had a logistics company that they kind of contract to, and I worked through them to get the containers to the place where they needed to be. So would it be, for example, using Compass Logistics that sent my first deliverance shipment, would Compass Logistics be the one with the bond? Or am I, as the producer, the creator, the one with the bond?
Last time when they cleared customs, did you need to approve any documents, or did they notify you on any documents that came through?
I did not have to be notified. No, it was just done. It was when I was like I had to make sure that the commercial invoice was there. I had to send documents that Longpack gave me, like 3 different documents, made sure that they had them in time for the uh, customs had them, but I didn't have to sign anything afterward.
So most likely you as a import, did you ever need to give them your EIN number for your business at all?
I don't think so. I don't recall, but I don't think so. It was just the details were all provided on the 3 documents that I was sent from Longpack for logistics. Was I remember the commercial invoice, the packing slip, packaging list, and then one more thing that I can't recall.
The bill of lading.
Yes, the bill of lading. Yes. So those 3 things were what I remember, and I didn't have any. It was very hands off for me after that.
Yeah. I think that in the case of these tariffs, because until now, board games were They were duty free, tariff free. There was no charges on them, so it was very easy to import them into the U.S. But now I feel like these kind of companies. I have a whole conspiracy theory about it. Um, regarding Amazon involved in all this, Amazon's involvement in all of this, but
Sean loves these types of conspiracy theories. Yeah.
yeah, I enjoy them. I don't necessarily believe any of them, but I'm like, maybe. And but I think with the tariffs, because now the custom clearance agents they report the tariff, and they need somebody to pay these tariffs. And what they can do is one out of two things: either now they will say, okay, Andrew Lowen is or is the importer on record, and he needs to pay these tariffs, and they will give you a bank account to pay into. Or option number two will be they will pay on your behalf, and then they will collect from you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how comprehensive they are or what are their prices in that regard, but um, in March when we offered, obviously we always took care of everything for the customers, and even through the tariffs, we always took care of everything for the customers. So as a rule of thumb, we always did DDP, like for all our customers, like door to door pay. You pay us to a U.S. bank account, and you get your goods on your doorstep. There's zero involvement on your end. I don't think you're also using multiple parties. It's not the same. Like
Right.
maybe they will not want to take responsibility over what Longpack declared. So they will want to throw the responsibility on the recipient or the receiver of the goods, depending on their model of operations and their capabilities. Yeah, I would say, but most likely they will throw it onto you. Either you need to pay them and they will pay on your behalf, or they will ask you to pay directly to the tariff bank account. And by the way, we have it a lot in EU and UK. I mean, we've been shipping to the EU and UK for 3 or 4 years, and they've been having VAT, which VAT and tariff are two separate things, and I can go in and explain about it. But in the EU and the UK, they've been needing VAT for ages. And what we've been doing for customers who sell in the EU properly, we declare everything for them. We pay on their behalf, but we literally pay with their name on the slip. So when they go to Amazon or to the UK government and say, okay, we imported X amount, we paid X amount of import VAT, they can reclaim the money back.
Yes.
And we've been doing this in the UK and the EU for 4 or 5 years. In the US, for the US, it's completely new. So I don't think it will be as agile as what they have as developed as what they have in the UK and EU. Yeah. So, but it will be okay. Like maybe like you taking the risk in the end of the day. If the merchandise gets stuck in customs and they say 1 second, who declares this value? Like is this real value or is it fake value? Are you a trustworthy importer? Who is the importer on record? But then if you then it will be so the consignee and the bill of lading. You will see you have the shipper, which will be Longpack, Eurotime, whoever or whatever company other than that, and then you will have the consignee. Usually, the consignee is the person on record that is the importer.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that case, it will be your responsibility, and you will need to pay for it.
Okay.
But either they might pay on your behalf if they and that will kind of solve your problem. I also want to mention it's very interesting. The UK and EU have been having VAT for 22%, 20%, whatever country, for many years now. The difference between VAT and tariff is VAT is reclaimable. So once you do some sales, you can reclaim the VAT you paid.
Yeah.
Uh,
About
but
half
then,
of the amount you reclaim.
or you can even reclaim all of it. Claim all of it
Okay.
back if your sales are high enough.
Okay.
If you paid enough sales VAT, if you need to prove to the UK government or to the EU government that you paid the sales VAT, and that you paid the sales VAT when you sold, and you paid the import VAT when you imported, and then it balances out.
Okay.
So because the point of the EU and the UK was 1 second, we are outsourcing all this manufacturing to China, and they're importing all these goods, and the UK and the government is not making its taxes, right? So
Yeah.
they stopped it. They said you have to pay on import all the VAT, and then they know that they got their money. If you sold later on, you can reclaim that VAT back and you pay the sales VAT. But the government ensures, and all across the EU, it's a very comprehensive system that they have. I'm telling you, the EU is very advanced. Like if you're a German seller and you sell into Poland or into Greece, you can pay the VAT for the Greece sales in Germany already. But in the U.S., every state has its own sales VAT number, and nobody tracks. All these states are not connected. None of them are connected. In the EU, all these EU nations are all connected, so you can pay all the sales VAT in any country. It makes it easier for the VAT return and for the government to maintain its taxes. The EU is new, the US is new and simply slapped a tariff on everything. Tariff is not refundable. They don't care. You sold, you didn't sell. You got to pay this tariff.
Yeah.
So the US is a little different. But for your case, honestly, Andrew, I would like for your next order. How many containers do you have? Right, this is a real time question.
We're probably gonna put 2 containers into the U.S. We'll make. I'm trying to kind of decide my final numbers now. I've got about 3 months until I begin manufacturing, but I'm thinking, we sold maybe 3,000 expansions and like 2,500 base games in this last Kickstarter, which makes 1 container to the US for sure. But then we'll probably increase that amount of base games so that we can have and expansions. So we'll probably print 5,000 expansions, maybe, I'd like to print, 8,000 base games, something like that, so that we can have, about 4 times as many base games as we do expansions. And so that we can be a company and sell for the next year, and have stock. So that's the intent. So probably 2 to 3 containers into the US.
Yeah. So if I were in your shoes, what I would do is, first of all, contact a company like PrimeShip, right?
Mhm.
But exactly like we were discussing in the beginning, I would literally split my shipments into the US. So don't send a whole container at once. Send 3 pallets at a time. I would also urge you to use Mocha Logistics because they already know all the stuff. Bridge is awesome,
Yeah.
but you talk to Eric about this because
Yeah.
it's he's very it's a different level. But split shipments. So you take this whole container that you got to ship to the UK, and you do to the US, and you do 5 trips, or you break it down into 5.
Mhm.
Then all the rest of the base games you make, if you need to check with Longpack if they can produce them over 1,000 copies, then another 1,000 copies, and another 1,000 copies. So, and giving you the same price all across, which is a little
Mhm.
difficult, but it is possible.
Yeah.
It is possible, because maybe I'm giving trade secrets, but you want to print. So the main cost is setting up the printing machine.
Mhm.
Right, that's the main cost of all your production, especially for a game like Deliverance.
Mhm.
That is you probably have 40 different printing sheets or runs that go into this game. So you probably have a 36-page rule book. I don't know.
Yep.
You have 24 maybe. You have a bunch of player boards. You have 2-3 decks of cards. You have a foldable game board, I assume.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you have probably 30, 40 print runs. And each print run costs to set up, depending on which machines they use. But it will cost you around between $100 and $150 just to set up
Mhm.
this machine. So if I were you, if I were in your shoes, I would print all of the copies at once, then slowly produce
Mhm.
the rest of the copies. So you don't need to waste money on sitting stock
Yeah.
in a warehouse, because even if you store in China, it's still $15 a pallet. And if you
Yeah.
fit 150, so that $15 becomes very high as months go
Yeah.
by. That would be my solution. I also don't want to badmouth like I don't want okay. So you have 2 business models of how you run a factory in China. you have the model of Panda, and what we do is where we fully own the factory. Everything is literally in-house. As much as possible is in-house. Literally as much as possible. And then you have
quality assurance.
System, quality assurance, and you have a system tracking the exact, like, I don't know if Panda reached that level yet. I don't think they have, but you have like a system that tracks every production steps across the production. So then you can print, and then keep 3,000 print sheets inside the factory, shrink wrap them very, very well so no dust comes in, they don't get damaged, nothing, but you keep them so they don't waste space, so they don't cost you a lot of space. And then you store them there as you need, and then you produce them as you need. So say, oh, I sold out of you project your pre-order point, you look at your forecasting, you say, okay, in the month of June, July, I will sell out of this 1,000. When August comes in, through October, I will need another 2,000 copies. So in July, you ask them to, okay, please assemble another 2,000 games.
Yep.
So
you're kind of leveraging the long pack facility for me as storage, where the assembly line is the got it. So
not just in between, the transitions in between, but you really need to have a very full control on the factory. It needs to be in. It all has to be, like, in my perspective, it all has to be in-house.
Yeah. So I guess we probably have to bring this thing in for a landing here, because I'd really like to make sure this whole podcast is released in 1 week, and we're getting we're getting up there in the length of time. And so I guess I'd really like to bring this in for a landing with any remaining advice that you would have for a publisher that would help them navigate this time.
Stay calm, I'd say. First of all, stay calm. There are always solutions out there, They really are. I heard once, whenever the most difficult time produces the biggest opportunity, and I would say, don't be afraid. There are always solutions out there, in any shape or form. Yeah, I would say contact us if you need any help. Like, most of my sales team knows already what I'm implementing and how to operate it. Most of my team. So yeah, I think just listen to this podcast, and maybe we can do like a thread or follow up where people ask questions and we can answer them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say it's a tough time. It's like massive companies don't know what to do. Like as Modi's doesn't know what to do. So probably hold off a little bit longer. Explain to your backers that it's crazy. Hold off stock in China, or if you did not produce yet, start producing into US a little bit. Just to you don't need to produce everything in the US. You produce whatever you need for Europe and the UK and Australia and the China, and then the rest you produce in the US. So you kind of split. You balance out your risk, and don't stress out. Don't become negative. We don't need to be negative. It's everything that is happening is, we just need to navigate it. Stormy waters, and in the end of the days, it will settle in any direction.
Yeah.
But you want to stay agile enough with enough options that you can navigate whatever situation comes.
Yep. That's great advice. The small business owner is so resilient. In fact, I would go as far as to say the small business owner is the most resilient type of business that you have, because you look at the US, over half the businesses in the US are small business. I want to say 3/4, or it's half of the population of the US is employed by a small business owner. And it's just a massive number when you consider, you've got massive giants like Walmart and Amazon and you name it, Apple and Tesla, and so small business owners are very, very good at weathering storms. And anybody listening to this podcast, if you're making something, you are a small business owner, and you have to kind of have this mindset, in my view, of how can we get this done? Not can we get this done, but how. And it's a matter of sometimes, like I remember, there's a story in the Bible of a man named Elijah, and he just goes through this really, really epic destruction of, it was like Baal versus God, and there was this like, yes, and so there was like, whose God is the best? And there's a story where Elijah has this massive, massive victory, and then right after that, you've got Jezebel and Ahab, and Jezebel's like, I'm gonna take your head off, and he gets freaked out, he gets scared, and he runs into the wilderness, and he's just like, God, there's no one else, and he has no hope. Like the short version, he has zero hope, and he's just right after this incredible high victory, he is down in the dumps and has no hope at all. And you know what God does? God gives him some food and a nap. Everything's better. So that's what he needed. And sometimes, it's kind of a funny thing, but we can have such distress and such such a difficult problem if we hyper focus and just agonize over something. I think sometimes the best thing you can do is go for a walk, go work out, go play a video game, go play a board game, go enjoy yourself, find things in your life that you enjoy, and occupy some of your mental energy, put some of your mental energy into those things, and it can really help refocus you, try to get a good night's sleep, go to bed early, get good food, and make sure to treat your body well, get some sun, other things like that, and just simply let your brain and the subconscious, which thinks at a million times faster than your conscious rational brain, your neocortex, let that do the work. I think you will be shocked at how your brain processes information because of a good night's sleep. Like the whole night your brain is processing, and you just need to trust in the brain that God gave you to do what it knows how to do, and to reason through things that are in your subconscious. And that's kind of my, I guess, you know feedback that has really worked for me in the midst of many difficult situations, from college papers being due to like, how am I going to solve this business problem, to, oh my goodness, this personal problem is like way overwhelming. And I've gone through a lot in my life, and each time it's like I'm going to withhold judgment on the situation and just let my brain do the processing, and let's just see what bubbles up tomorrow.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a perfect answer. It's a perfect answer. When God doesn't give you a challenge that you cannot sustain, that you cannot hold, like
Yeah.
if I mean, if you believe, like, yeah, not everybody believes or whatever, but He does give you. He will not give you a challenge that not at the right time.
Mhm.
And if you cannot overcome this challenge,
Mhm.
He will not give it,
Yeah.
or He's showing you a new direction, right?
Yeah.
So, so
It's like,
it's
hey,
just
there's a
really
wall in
just
front of you. Find a new way. Climb over
yeah,
it, maybe, or wait for the
just
so.
connecting to that. And I want to finish because you mentioned the wall with the story of Dostoevsky. He has a story about this Russian minister, and you can cut it off if you want,
No, it's
but
good. I
that
want to
Russian
hear it.
minister reached the wall and he could not cross it. So what he did, he withered and he said, "Oh, I'm shitty. I'm not capable. It's impossible." And he dug himself into a hole, and then the wall became bigger and taller and taller and taller, and he never passed it. So you never want to dig yourself into that hole. I think that time of, okay, let me take a week off, rest, let my subconscious connect and find the right answer. I love that piece of advice. Yeah, that's the best advice that you can give.
Yeah, and another thing I'll mention to your point, patience is such a virtue, and sometimes I joke with people, and I said, when people are going through this really difficult time, like if they believe in God, I'll ask them, did you pray for patience? You know, it's one of the worst things you could pray for, because God's like, oh, okay, I'll give you opportunities to learn patience, you know, and you need to be really, really specific. Like, no, God, I don't want the opportunity to become patient. I want the actual patience. Like, just get me to the end step right away. You know, I don't want to have to deal with the pain of, you know, forcing me to learn to be patient, you know. But anyway, it's something that I think you can run really, really fast in the wrong direction and you feel like you're moving, but in actuality, like you said, digging the hole, you're going in the wrong direction. You're going to have to work even harder to come back into the right, you know, the right direction. So it's much better to walk, and even better to not do anything and to stay still. You know, if you're not sure what the right direction is, waiting is an excellent idea, you know? So, anyway, well, I guess we can conclude with that as a final thought. Thank you so much for joining, Hersh. It's always a pleasure. It's really great to reconnect with you. For everybody listening to this, yeah, no, it's my pleasure. So for everybody listening to this, how can people connect with you if they want to get their games manufactured by you, if they want to consult with you for logistics or other things like that?
They can go to Hero Time they can type in Google Hero Time Manufacturing or Hero Time, or they just go herotime1.com, the number one, and they will go directly to the website. They can leave a contact us form. They can also email manufacture@herotime1.com if they want, if they have any questions about anything. Yeah, maybe, yeah, I think that would be the best way. Yeah, Primeship, they can also contact Primeship if they don't want to go through me directly. They can also contact them. And yeah, I'd be very happy. Also on our website, you can go in and we have the US manufacturing page now. So they can go in over there a little bit and contact us through there. So we know that they're interested in the US facility. Because the more interest we have, the more we know to push forward. So it's really like Sean mentioned, Kickstarter or crowdfunding campaign for that. I think the more requests we get for the US facility, the more support we get from the industry towards that, the more we can develop it and the faster we can develop it. So yeah, just through the website, through the email, anything is good.
Okay,
By the
fantastic.
way,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Oh,
the
go ahead. Go
shipping
ahead.
company is primeship.delivery.
Okay.
So they can go to it's not .com, it's primeship.delivery.
That's awesome. I think that's a fantastic. It's probably my personal number one takeaway is that Primeship.delivery. It's something that I think rather than outsourcing to all the different companies to get product to their own facility, that I can use one logistics company to send to each facility, and that the fact that logistics company has more, I guess, more weight to throw around and is going to be able to help me. I think that's a huge benefit. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for joining for everything else. So.
You're welcome. My pleasure. My pleasure. Always a pleasure.
All right. Well, let's have Robot Richard send us on out.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. For more resources, articles, and to listen to past podcasts, please visit us at crowdfundingnerds.com. And if you have a crowdfunding question, we also have a page on our site where you can send a message directly to us. Please visit crowdfundingnerds.com/question. And if your question is a great question, we may include it in a future podcast. Thank you all again for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next week. Stay nerdy.